From ghost cars to phantom crashes and a couple haunted subways and trains in between, these vehicles have sinister stories attached to them. Here is part 2 of the top 10 cursed cars that took control. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Ghost Tractor. This story comes from someone who goes by the online username Need More Cowbell, and their creepy late night driving story starts off by explaining that they and their friends decided to drive 4 hours to Kings Island in Cincinnati, and they decided to go super early so that they would be there when it opened. They planned to stay until close and then drive back. They continued on saying that they were in 3 different cars, one of the cars only carrying them and one other person. They write, quote, "We were going south on 75 coming down Jellicoe Mountain, and we were about an hour from home. All of a sudden I saw a stopped tractor trailer rig in front of me. I jerked the wheel hard to miss it and fishtailed a bit and got it back under control, only to look back and realize that there was nothing there. Nothing too unusual about a really tired person hallucinating, but my friend looked over at me and asked if I saw the tractor trailer rig too. Neither of us had been drinking and the night and road were completely clear. The people in the car behind us did not see anything. This was without a doubt one of the strangest things to ever happen to me." I can totally see why they would be completely freaked out. A phantom tractor trailer just in the middle of the road definitely could have had a way worse ending than it did. In our number 9 spot today, we have the London Underground haunting. Old cities like London hold many stories of paranormal experiences and freaky, unexplainable encounters. One of these common stories is that of ghost trains going through the underground stations at night, and many train drivers experiencing ghost encounters and other spooky situations. One person told their story of their encounter with one of these unsettling ghost trains on the London Underground. He was waiting on a train with his parents when they heard the sounds of a train arriving just a few minutes early. They immediately noticed something strange when there was no wind from the train's arrival, an every time occurrence on the underground. As the train got closer, they looked through the windows of the cockpit area and noticed that there was no driver inside of the train. It got even more strange when the doors slid open and there was not a single passenger inside. They went to board when his mother stopped them, saying not to get on. The train sat with the doors open for what felt like several minutes, as though trying to convince them to get on board. Finally, the train left, and shortly after, their proper scheduled train arrived, with a gust of wind, a driver, and full of people. Who knows where this mysteriously empty train may have taken them if this mother hadn't stopped them from boarding. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Ghost Crash. This story starts off with the storyteller explaining that they and their daughter were driving to Oklahoma City from Wichita Falls, Texas, in order to catch a flight home to Pennsylvania. They were driving down the I-44 and it was 4:05 a.m. and the highway was empty. They continue on, quote, "We were almost out of Lawton city limits when we saw an older model car, light blue or silver, launch off an embankment, roll 3 or 4 times end over end. I could actually see a human fly through the air. I pulled over and called 911 and gave them the GPS coordinates of the overpass. I asked the dispatch if I should back down the highway, and she told me not to because there was an officer less than 2 minutes away. 20 minutes later, I get a call from the police asking exactly where it was. I repeated the info. The officer said that he was sitting at that location and there was nothing there. Not a skid mark, broken glass, or flattened grass, nothing at all. When I got home, I googled it. This is what I found out. Exactly 10 years prior, a group was speeding down a suburban road when they lost control, flipped over a guardrail, and rolled down the embankment. All 6 in the car were killed. They were driving a 1986 Oldsmobile. The time of the accident was 4:05 a.m. Seems like this person just happened to see a horrible tragedy of years past. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Golden Eagle. This car was a 1964 Dodge 330 limited edition, and it has been blamed for the death of around 14 people. It is said that this car started out as a police car originally, but there were 3 officers assigned to this car who all ended up ending their lives and other people's lives in horribly violent ways. Not in the car, but still super weird that this all seemed to happen after they had been using the cars for work. Because of this strange correlation, it ended up being sold off to another man. Throughout the 80s and 90s, it was said that because of the rumored cursed car, it became a point of interest for vandals. People began vandalizing the car, only to meet their own untimely fates, which were all met in strange ways. For example, it is said that one vandal died from being struck by lightning, and another ended up having his head removed by an 18-wheeler. Okay, not good. It is said that the curse is so strong that one person decided to merely touch the car, and it sent him into madness as he went on to commit atrocious crimes after that. The car, now now belongs to Wendy Allen, who supposedly collects and decorates haunted cars for a living. You know, she's living life on the edge, taking a risk every day. So it seems as though it's finally found its home far, far away from everyone else. In our number 6 spot today, we have Kymlinge Station. This station landed a spot on this list because legend has it, it has a ghostly vehicle that likes to travel along its tracks. Back in the 1970s, the authorities in Stockholm were starting to build a line that would head out to Kymlinge, and prior to them starting the work on the line, they decided to start with the station. Once they started building this station, however, one day construction on it abruptly stopped in 1976, never to be started again. While authorities just assumed that one day they could casually resume the construction, theories and legends began to take hold instead. The station started earning itself an eerie reputation, one that suggests that this station is actually the station for the dead. People believe that the reason the construction randomly stopped at this station is because those who were building it happened to stumble upon something very sinister. There's even a saying that goes along with the stories: only the dead get off at Kymlinge. In our number 5 spot today, we have the road stop. This story comes from someone who goes by the username LTT, and they start their story off by explaining that one night they were in Vermont and they were driving back from a friend's cabin because their grandmother was very, very sick and in hospital. They threw the address of the hospital into the GPS and took off from the cabin at about 2 a.m. as it was more of an emergency situation. After driving for 2 hours, they realized that they needed to stop somewhere to pee, so they pull off at the next visitor center they pass, which was completely void of any humans or cars. The bathrooms were locked, but the porta potties outside weren't, so they enter one of those to do their business. When they open the door to get out, despite the fact that there are 4 porta potties in a line, there is a man waiting outside of the one that they were in. He looked at him, and the man said, "Be careful out there, you never know what kind of weirdos you will find." Makes my stomach turn just saying it. The writer is totally confused because why would someone say that? Why is he there? And why was he waiting outside of that stall? The weirdness only escalated when he realized that this man must have been driving the 18-wheeler that was suddenly at the rest stop, but how did he not hear it pull in? He books it back to his car and drives away as fast as possible. He continues on writing, quote, "I kept thinking back to his face. Nothing seemed right about the dude. His blank stare, his voice, he even had a weird smell that I can't really describe that was both strong but subtle at the same time. At this point, he's now about 20 minutes away from where this encounter happened and has since calmed down a bit, until he writes, I, quote, slow my speed when I hear that same monotone voice come over my CB. Passing on the right, all of a sudden, without warning, that creepy truck zooms by me going at least 30 miles per hour faster than I was, without headlights. Now by this time, the early morning twilight was coming through the mountains, but it was still pretty dark out. The only lights this truck had were the amber running lights on the side of the trailer and the tail lights. Then, as quick as the thing screamed by, it was gone. For 9 years I have been trying to explain how this guy was driving that fast on those tight roads without headlights, and I just have no clue. Maybe I was just way too tired, maybe the guy did have headlights on and I just didn't see them come up to me around the bend. I don't know, but it is definitely the creepiest event I have ever experienced. In our number 4 spot today, we have James Dean's car. Famous actor James Dean passed away from a car accident on September 30th, 1955. He was driving his silver Porsche 550 Spyder, which he had just purchased recently. This was only the beginning of the car's curse, however, as after James' passing, the remnants of the totaled car were bought by a man named George Barris. George decided to sell the parts of the car to James' fans, but when the car was being worked on and taken apart, it ended up falling on a mechanic and it crushed him to death. These two incidents are more than enough to now consider this car cursed, but it still continues on. Once the people who had purchased some of the car parts began receiving them, more strange things happened. 3 of the people who received parts ended up in car accidents, all of which were sadly quite severe, and the shell of the car was also stolen, and to this day, it has never been recovered. In our number 3 spot today, we have the funeral train. Back in April of 1865, the American president at the time, Abraham Lincoln, was assassinated. After this event, he of course needed to be transported home, and to do this, they placed his body on a train back to his home in Springfield. This is of course terrible, but you didn't come here for a history lesson, so you might be wondering why I'm talking about this at all. Well, this is the story behind the reason why people think that every year in April there is a phantom train, the ghost of the one that carried the former president, and people say it runs through 180 different cities. You can't always see the train itself, but people report hearing it and seeing its lights. Another strange thing that happens is how many people have reported that, when they had an experience with this ghost train, their watch or clock died at the exact same time that the real train would have passed through on its original journey. Many people have said that when they saw the ghost train, they thought it was real before they watched it disappear before their very own eyes. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Sedan. Of course, it is well known that Bonnie and Clyde were the notorious criminal couple who completed a series of robberies and such in the 30s. Their crime spree was brought to an end on May 23, 1934, when police surrounded their Ford sedan and let somewhere around 100 bullets fly into it. Of course, this was the end of the couple, but their story has survived on, and that is exactly why the sedan that is riddled with bullet holes found its new home in Whiskey Pete's Casino in Nevada. It's definitely already quite creepy to look at, but there are visitors who claim that something more is going on. Many have suggested that they have felt some sort of presence that makes them extremely uncomfortable when they're anywhere near the car. Others have reported being able to actually see shadowy figures inside of the vehicle. Maybe after all this time, Bonnie and Clyde are still around. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Surrey Ghost Car. On December 11th, 2002, a call came into the Surrey Police Department. The caller reported that they had just seen a car lose control and run off of the road and then presumably crash. It was, of course, an emergency call, but not necessarily anything out of the ordinary. That was until authorities got to the location and realized that they couldn't find any kind of evidence of a crash. They kept searching and ended up finding a maroon-colored car that was nose down in a ditch nearby, but this car was covered in so much undergrowth that it must have been here for months. This meant that somehow this crash went undetected for 5 months, and worst of all, so did the body that lay nearby. Using dental records, they were able to identify the body as a man who had been wanted for robbery since July of that year. It is said that the sighting of the car leaving the road was a ghostly replay of the events that had taken place 5 months prior. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!